Okay, so we're going to start reading Canterbury Tales today, which we just reviewed, but we might as well do it again for the video. Oops, let me grab my study guide as well. Canterbury Tales are a collection of like road trip stories that were, and you'll see this in the prologue in the beginning, that were made to like keep all the adults not so bored on the road, which I feel like I really understand because Silas gets bored on trips all the time. We always play like I Spy and stuff like that, so in a sense it's the same thing. But the irony of this religious journey, this pilgrimage, is that at the time its reputation was like terrible. All the drinking, all the sexing, all the fighting that these people were doing was really ruining the reputation of its, like the whole point of it. And our author decided to comment on that and also comment on how people acted at the time. The reality at the time was they were, which you know from your web quest, is that they were just starting to break out of like how they couldn't climb up the social ladder. And our author, Mr. Geoffrey Chaucer, he did climb up the social ladder by marriages and by jobs. So he was kind of a pioneer in this aspect, and he spent a lot of time with rich people, and he learned that, what we all know, that they're not that great. Just because someone rich doesn't mean that they're not morally bankrupt. So he plays on a lot of stereotypes about different people, and I don't know, it's supposed to be fun. So let's see, review notes starting on page 15 in your study guide. Feudal system is in decline, we know that. The chivalrous code is in decline, which we didn't spend any time talking about this year. That's like the Knights Code, which is earlier in your study guide. Yep. Canterbury Tales is unfinished. It's written in verse, but we're reading it in prose and paragraphs. The shrine of St. Thomas at Becket, where they were going, was supposed to have great healing qualities. So some of these pilgrims were going for health rather than religious reasons. For example, the wife of Bath was somewhat deaf. Okay, and all these people, oh good, the summoner had boils, great. So the next thing on your study guide then on page 15 is your list of all the people who are on this giant road trip together. They're on horses, they're not like in one bus, so they're separate, but they're all together. And you can see that they're kind of like labeled by their jobs. Knight, squire, that's like a knight assistant. The yeoman, that's like one level down. Prioress, that's like a nun lady worker. Monk, friar, merchant, clerk, person who works in a store. Sergeant, a franklin.
If you were a monk, wouldn't you have to be like in shape? Because a fat, bald person?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a wonderful point, and I think he did that on purpose to point out some qualities that he thought that he was trying to tear down the church a little bit. A lot of people were mad at it at this point in history because it was, I don't know, being like abused. The power was being abused, so I think that's why he made the monk fat and lazy and yucky. Okay, so we're going to start with the prologue. The prologue is always the beginning. I will start reading. If you guys want to read as well, that's fine. Otherwise, I can, since I'm making a video of it, and it'll be a nice thing to have. So here's our prologue. April rain was dripping off the branches as I rode beneath them. Oh, that's nice. So we know what our setting is, but I don't have a question. It's April. But the last sunlight of a fine spring day made the leaves shine, and I was glad to be on my way. I could stay the night at the Tabard Inn in Southwark, and then I could make a start for Canterbury by first light. It's not like everyone goes on one trip every year. It's like a constant highway of people making this trip to Canterbury. Like the road is filled, not just like one road or one trip. But it seemed that I was not the only one on the Kent road that day. As I stabled my horse, I found 20 other animals, their heads already in the manger, rending noisily, eating noisily, at the knots of hay. And technically, rend was a vocab word that we had that means like tear apart, because that's how animals eat. Their saddles were hung up above their stalls, and as I opened the low door and ducked into the tabard's yellow warmth, My eyes stung and my nose filled with the reek of cooking and wood smoke. "Geoffrey!" roared the innkeeper, pushing his way between two priests to greet me at the door. No one makes you more welcome than my good friend Harry Bailey, the innkeeper of the Tabard. He can remember a guest's name from one year to the next, and he's always ready with a hot meal and a jug of the finest wine. I do believe he keeps the best inn south of the river. Okay, so number 1, where is the author going? Which we knew before we even started.
April?
No, April is the month that's happening. Jacob, where are we going?
Canterbury.
Canterbury, yep, which is the city. And these are the city's tales, Canterbury's tales. Where is he going to stay? Where are we right now?
The inn.
Yeah, at an inn, and its name is the Tabard Inn. And he loves the owner of the Tabard Inn because of a couple of reasons. What are they?
Wine.
Wine. He's got great wine. Also, he always remembers your name. So, that's good. "You'll have good company for your pilgrimage this year, friend," he said, beaming at me. "There must be a dozen other pilgrims already." "It's the time of year," said a gray-headed knight sitting close by. "The spring comes round clean and fresh, and people want to put themselves right with God. Besides, the winter roads haven't been passable until now. I'm just back from Normandy." Ooh, you know where Normandy is, do you remember? That's where Middle English came from. And we speak that language in England at the time of the writing. That's the official language of the England at this time. Normandy. Norman invasion. The beaches of Normandy. Where are we? What modern day country? France, yes. France, okay. Yeah, my horse was forever knee-deep in mud over there. I liked him at once, this quiet, noble-looking man. From the mud on his jerkin, vocab word, sleeveless jacket, he looked as if he had traveled half Christendom, half of the Christian Europe world, and I thought he might have a few good tales to tell. So I sat down beside him, and I looked around at my fellow pilgrims. What a gallery of faces! There were about as many as the letters in the alphabet, and each one equally different from his neighbor. There were priests and nuns and tradesmen, men down from the city and up from the country, guildsmen and laborers. A gawky scholar sat in a corner reading, while a gigantic woman in an enormous hat sat on the other end of his bench, shouting and laughing in a voice that drowned most others. "Do you know any of these people?" I asked the knight. "The lad over there is my son, see, the one playing the lute and singing to the barmaid. He wrote the song himself." I picked him out, a handsome curly-haired boy in an embroidered shirt, and the yeoman in the green coat. He's my boy's serving man. The door beside me opened, and the smell of onions burst in, closely followed by a fright of a man. His face was covered in boils, gross, and spots, and weeping sores. Blah. I swear, even his sweat smelt of pickled onions, and his sweat had been with him for a long time, if you know what I mean. Yet another Christian was making his yearly pilgrimage. For the rest of the evening, pilgrims straggled into the tabard and paid for a meal, a blanket, and a cup or two of mulled wine. So they go to this bar and they also get to sleep there, which is very convenient, depending on how much you drink. By 8 o'clock, there were 30 of us, all bound for Canterbury. Cattle drovers traveling up from the Old Kent Road put their heads round the door, saw the crowd, and went back to sleep with their cows. My friend the innkeeper was enjoying excellent business, and it put him in a particularly agreeable mood. I was just thinking of going to bed when he banged down his mug on the table and called out, "Listen here, friends! You'll all ride as a party tomorrow, won't you?" "Only sensible," said a brusque, quick-eyed fellow. "Thieves, highwaymen, Kent, notorious, only sensible." "Well, I've a mind to go with you," said Harry Bailey, "but I know that ride. It's a long time to sit in a hard saddle. Let's liven up the journey with a competition. Each of us can tell a story, and whoever tells the best will get a free dinner on the way back, and the rest of us will foot the bill." Yeah, most of us cheered and stamped our feet, although the scholar in the corner went on reading his book, hearing nothing. "I'll be the judge, and the judge's word is final," Harry declared, grinning broadly. Maybe a vote, said a pale-eyed man with a few strands of blonde, wispy hair. But our host cut him off short. And anyone who quarrels with my rules pays the expenses of the entire trip. Sure, done, settled, agreed, blah, blah. The blond man was silenced by more stamping and clapping and cheering as the warm wine settled comfortably on our stomachs. We all began to feel like lifelong companions. Oh, they're getting drunk and friendly, bless their hearts. Some clergyman pointed out that St. Paul called on storytelling as an unholy waste of time, but we managed to ignore him. Quite soon the wine settled heavily on our eyelids too, and one by one we went upstairs to the rickety cribs of the Tabards' dormitory. I lay down and began racking my brains for a story to tell. My Canterbury pilgrimage promised to be more entertaining than usual. I wouldn't like you to think that I was looking forward more to the stories than to visiting the shrine of Holy St. Thomas, like this entertainment more than the religious aspect. But there's more to be said for pilgrimages than just seeing a holy place. You often meet such extraordinary people on the way. Let's answer some questions. Number 4, what is everyone doing in the inn right now?
Partying.
Partying, eating, getting ready for the trip. Yes, lots of action. Business is good. Number 5, how many pilgrims are there?
About as many as the alphabet.
Right. I think they also said 30, so that's an average between the two, 26 and 30. 6, where are they going? All these pilgrims?
And
They're all going to Canterbury. Yep. 7, why are they going to tell stories?
It's a long ride.
Yeah, it's a long ride. It's going to be boring, so let's pass the time. It's not like they had phones to look at and Instagram to troll on the way. Number 8, what is the prize for the best story?
free dinner.
Free dinner, yes. And I will tell you, every year we've done this. At the end, you write your own Canterbury tale, and I will buy you a free dinner at Casey's. I used to do Subway cards, but R.I.P. Subway. Rip. 9, what does the author say also happens on pilgrimages? We just read it, so it's right at the end of the break there.
You meet people.
Yeah, the journey is the journey. The journey is the ride.
So, wait, what?
You meet a lot of really fun people when you go on this road trip. Next morning, we were stumbling about the yard in the cold and the dark in a welter of horses and a net of rain, so that sounds a mess. A shape I had mistaken for the gatepost, who proved to be the miller, so a skinny tall dude, cursed the weather and wished himself home in bed. "'Tis not but God's holy water to bless us on our way," said the gentle voice of the ploughman as he packed straw under his saddle in place of a rug. I began to work out who everybody was, because it's still dark, and which of the pilgrims were traveling together. The parson, that's like a preacher, who disapproved of stories was the ploughman's brother. The noisy, evil-smelling individual with the horrible face was also a religious gentleman, a summoner, traveling with a pale, giggling partner who had long, sparse blonde hair. I had to look twice to see if it was not a woman. So that's another insulting description to a religious man here. The biggest party was made up of master craftsmen. So that's like your blue-collar workers, your carpenters, your builders, your lumberjacks. I don't know what medieval jobs are like that. Suspicious of Kent's Inn, they had even brought along their own cook. So all the worker dudes brought along their own cook. A man stuffed as full of recipes as a sucking pig with apples. To hear him talk made your mouth water. If he had just stopped drinking and picking that sore on his leg, gross! I might have employed him myself. Can you imagine having someone be your cook and their gross, crusty zits or scabs are almost ready to fall into the soup that they're making you? Yeah, barf. No, thank you. From the tangle of reins, I sorted out my own, mounted, dismounted, told the ship's captain he was on my horse, whoopsies, helped him onto his, so everyone's drunk and it's dark. Very soon, like a row of chessmen escaping from the chessboard, we ambled off the paved yard and into the quagmire of the Drover's Road. Quagmire was a vocab word, and it means big old wet, marshy area. So it is a mess because it's raining. I'm almost done with this. Can you wait until that's over?
Yeah.
Thanks. Gradually, as the light strengthened, I could make out the different colors of clothes, the different quality of the horses, the pale, bleary faces of the silent riders. Beside me, the night's chainmail began to shine like fishes' scales in the half-light. Suddenly, through the mist loomed a horrible sight. A massive dark shape, bristling all over with long curved spines, was shuffling toward us, enveloped in a smell as thick as fog. I reined in. He was like, whoa. The knight beside me gave a great round laugh and set his chain shirt clanking. Ah ha ha, you city people. Anyone would think you'd never seen a herd of cows before. Then a steer raised its curved horns and bellowed. Jacob, can you give us a moo to get in the mood?
No.
The drovers with their long whips emerged from the mist, and the herd swept past and between us as if we were ghosts. I was all set to run home and hide under the bed, I admitted, laughing shamefacedly. I'm no St. George when it comes to fighting dragons. I could never see the point in gallantry and being brave. I could have kicked myself. The knight had spent most of his life fighting in one war or another, but he smiled generously and said, I agree, Master Chaucer. There's far too much unnecessary killing nowadays among these fashionable young knights. Life's too precious. Fights to the death ought to be over matters of life and death. That's my opinion. I never had much time for Palamon in our sight. Who? Then Harry interrupted. He was holding out a bundle of straws to each rider, saying, take one, take a straw. What's this for? I asked, pulling out a long straw. You're all so modest, I can't get anyone to tell the first story, so we're drawing straws. The first person who draws a short straw tells the story. Oh. Oh dear, said the knight, holding up the short straw. Not sure I know any stories. His face began to redden with shyness as the riders surrounded him, gaping at him expectantly. Oh, what about Palamon and Arcite? I suggested. You just talked about them. Oh yeah, right. He cleared his throat, he looked around him with a plea for patience, and he began, the first unwilling entrant in our competition. So, all right.
That game.
Pardon?
I remember doing that game.
What game? Oh, the straws? Mm-hmm, yeah, people still use it, yeah. 10. Why is Chaucer afraid? What spooks him the most in this dark morning? Pardon?
Is it the thunder?
I don't think it's actually the thunder.
Cow.
I think it's a cow coming out, and he's like, what is that? Oh, it's a cow. Because it's real dark, he can't quite see. And 11, who's going to tell the first story?
The knight.
The knight, that's right. Good, so we're going to read the knight's tale here. And go to the restroom, yep, and just come back in quietly.
Yeah, use the restroom too.
Sure, do we need to take a potty break?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you go ahead. I'll just make another one of this. Potty break.